Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
G'day, how you going? It's Phil Tarrant here, host of the Smart Property Investment Show. I hope you're well, doing whatever you're doing. Probably tuning into this, driving somewhere, maybe looking at houses on a Saturday. Who knows? The last time I've done that many years ago is go and look at real estate. But use buyers agents for that sort of stuff these days, which is pretty cool. Gives me time to get stuff done and spend time with family, which is pretty good, and I do enjoy it. But one of the things we do on this show is that we bring, and it's quite funny how it works, how people find themselves working in property as a career. There's a number of different pathways into it. Either they're builders that end up becoming developers that end up either making a lot of money or losing a lot of money in property, and or people start investing in property and realise they like it and pursue a career in that. And often it's funny when you speak to these people who've come out of a different career into property, how much they like their new career and maybe lament maybe the career that's behind them. But often you need different experiences to get you to the right direction, and property is a great place to build careers. I think one of the 8 Australians work in the property economy in some degree, so that's builders and everything and anyone in between. So I like those stories, particularly property investors that end up as property professionals, but I typically like the investment bit the most because it gives a background and a bit of a sense for why and how people ended up doing what they're doing. And we certainly have that in the studio today with our two guests, Michael and Nicole Kowalczyk. I think I've got that right. Yeah. Welcome to the show. How you going?
Good.
Hello. Great. Thanks for having us on the show, Phil.
Mate, it's great to be here. Now, you were nominated or one of the finalists for Buyer's Agent of the Year at the RAB Awards. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
How long have you been doing this for?
Last few years. So basically since 2022, 2021, 22. Yeah,
so relatively recent.
Fresh.
For BA.
Yeah.
Fresh in the BA space there.
Fresh in the BA. But you've been investing for quite some time, you guys.
Yeah,
more than a decade.
Yeah, I got in, for context for listeners, both Nicole and I, we're 35. I got into my first property at the age of 21. So we're pushing 14 years now in investing.
21.
Yeah.
When did you get? When was your first property?
23.
23. You guys started young.
We did. We did.
You happy you did that?
Look,
yes.
Absolutely. I mean, I started from pretty humble beginnings. I mean, I grew up in housing commission, so money naturally was tight. And so after finishing school, I began working a lot as a tradie, working multiple jobs, basically trying to save up a deposit to then get to that first property at the age of 21. And that did okay. It probably wasn't the smartest decision in hindsight looking back, but then that got us into property 2. And then Nicole joined in property 3 whilst she began working as a nurse. So what that did is it allowed us to help save more. It allowed us to keep building that property portfolio without compromising on lifestyle and travel.
We love traveling.
And then by 2017, we got to a point where we had about 8 or 9 investment properties, and we got to a point where we got financially stuck, which is such a common thing for a lot of people. And to give more context around that, we got to a point, our portfolio, 8 to 9 properties sounds like a pretty good outcome, but the reality was we were negatively geared about $40,000.
Yeah.
And to make matters a bit more precious, and we were expecting, that's when Nicole was pregnant with our firstborn. So we were like, okay.
It's a great catalyst for change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so a bit of a turning point for us was we obviously need to address the elephant in the room, and we decided to, at that point, engage in a buyer's agent to try and help resolve that. And when we did, what we realized is that they weren't necessarily addressing the key concern and how to turn things around in terms of our portfolio with what we were trying to do. So then Nicole and I were like, well, they're not really listening to what we're trying to do. So we took control. We basically got ourselves educated. We ended up
building the right team.
Building the right team. We restructured some of our portfolio.
Oh God, that was
which
costly.
In itself was a costly exercise. And I think it took us about 2 years to be able to turn our portfolio from negative to positive. And so learning and having gone through that, I was like, wow, like this is amazing. And, throughout those years, over that last 14 odd years, Nicole and I, given my trade background, we touched on various strategies from like cosmetic renovations, structural renovations, things like granny flats, subdivisions, just repurposing properties like your short-term rentals, rooming all of
houses,
that, which basically helped to, give us the foundation of how we approach in investing today. And, what I will also say is that most of the portfolio that we built, we actually built that before coming into the industry as buyer's agents.
So you've obviously got a lot of scar tissue as a result, which is cool. So give me a sense, just to help me frame the chat today. What's your portfolio look like today? Like what sort of properties, what sort of value?
Yeah, great question. So our value is in the 8 figures at the moment, and we did have a net passive income of 6 figures a short while ago, but we did start to dabble in some development projects, which has kind of affected that a little bit. But for context, we've got 18 titles and 21 rentals.
Okay.
So
and
21 doors.
Where are they, all over the joint, or are they sort of clustered in particular areas?
Yeah, we've got a few in Queensland, a few in WA,
New South Wales,
and Victoria.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a pretty sophisticated portfolio.
Yeah, and we've got a bit of resi and commercial.
So if you listen, then we're just gone through an election sort of cycle, and you would assume that every single young Australian is locked out of the property market. You would, based on the rhetoric that you hear. So what I heard from you guys is that you started investing at 21 and 23. You love traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You've built a big portfolio, and you've afforded to be able to get married and have children.
Yeah.
So how hard is it to do it? Because if you listen to commentators out there, it's impossible to buy one property, let alone 21 properties. Or maybe people dislike you now. Like, but seriously, and you're copping as well, right? Going, you get painted this evil, this brush of the evil property investor, taking properties, making properties unaffordable. You guys are evidence that it can be done, and it can be done well with a lot of hard work, energy, and effort, it would appear.
Oh, that's nice.
Absolutely.
More investors, more
Without giving up anything, really. Like, you've worked hard, but
I think it comes down to desire and grit. I mean, when I grew up, like I said, I didn't have much money to begin with. So for me, that was a big, big driver, saying that I don't want my kids to kind of relive what I did. And that was my determination, that I had to do that. And I was relying on seeing other people do well in property, which is one of the catalysts that when we hit that turning point of being negatively geared, there was so many investors out there that I'd heard of that had more than 10 properties. And so like for us, I was like, what are we doing wrong? How do they go about it? So for us was to really get educated, because clearly there was that missing piece between, where we were to where we are now. And that was, what led us. Strategy.
So you guys now both buyers agents. You work inside a buyers agency.
Yeah.
What's the business called?
Tailored
Property Group. So prior to that, you were what sort of tradie were you, Mike?
So I was an electrician for about 10 years.
Okay. And Nicole?
I was a registered nurse.
We're a registered nurse. So went to university, did all that stuff.
I did. I've got a few degrees under my belt, not only nursing. The reason why I chose nursing was so that I could actually finally catch up and get into a property investment.
So you chose nursing so you could become a property investor, to make money, the overtime and all that sort of stuff?
I was the typical child from parents who were like, go to uni, get a job, get a good paying job. So I actually wanted to become a dentist.
Okay.
I let that go and became a nurse so I could get into the property industry, so that, if we wanted to retire young, I don't know, it was like one of those dreams and aspirations that we had.
Which is okay, but it sounds like you're never going to retire now because you're in the property industry. You'll always be doing something.
Well, that's it. I mean, when COVID hit and there was that uncertainty in the air as to what's considered essential, what's not, we got a taste of what retirement could be like. I mean, we had the portfolio, we had cash flow coming in.
Yeah.
We weren't necessarily bound to go to work, and we had that time with the kids to spend every single day. But the reality is that novelty after a few months, it wears off. And as humans, or at least from my perspective, I think we chase a level of fulfillment. At purpose.
Driven individuals, I think.
Yeah.
That because we're so driven, you
Need
wanted that
something
something to fulfill you more, and you were craving that challenge, and you were at home. You got that chance to be at home because of COVID. I, on the other hand, so I have
Work the whole way through it.
a bit of both. So, first property when we were stuck in 2017, when before we flipped it on and thinking, I had to go back after having my first child back to nursing, and I didn't do the whole year of maternity leave. But then the second time round, because we're in a better state, I didn't have to go back. Especially with COVID, I didn't want to go back. I was an ICU. I was like, no.
You're ICU nurse.
I was an ICU nurse. You already know that the healthcare wasn't good before COVID. It's not going to be better at COVID, especially with nurses. So when I came back later, people were like, how the hell did you get back so late during you did your pregnancy leave and then you kept on going. Well, we could afford that property. But when I did go back, it was like, hey, you know stuff about property, don't you? And I was like, oh, yeah, I do. What's up? Kind of thing. And it was like just people buying their own home or buying an investment or stuck because COVID made people get stuck in property. They did. And we built a network. And so I was like, you know what? Yeah, I know your answer kind of thing. I'll connect you with this person. And it's sort of like connecting other people and then sometimes just telling somebody how to do a reno a little bit smarter. And then it was like, hey, you guys should do this. Like, you guys should do this. Like, this is what you guys should do. And we were like, yeah, let's bite the bullet and do it. So when...
That's basically...
Yeah, our Taylor Property Group sort of...
It come from that?
It came from that. And then when we did say we were going to go in the buyer's agent space, the network that we did build and we told them, they were like, this is great, here's some referrals.
They went, well, I know someone that needs someone to
yeah,
speak to these people.
But they also knew our portfolio because they were our trusted advisors, for instance. Yeah. And they were like, hey, here's, and it sort of worked hand in hand. And then after a while, we're very referral based. It was like, client after client, somebody referred somebody else, referred somebody else. And then, we ended up being just helping everyday Aussies.
So once a nurse, always a nurse, but you're still a registered nurse?
I'm still a registered nurse.
Yeah. Do you think you'll always keep it? I come from a long family of nurses.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
I will tell you a fun fact about nursing.
Yes.
A lot of nurses are real estate licensed. I did not know that until I was like, I got my real estate license. And they're like, yeah, so do I. And I'm like, what? All the old nurses. I was like,
because they used to do two, right? Two jobs.
Two jobs?
Yeah, we've always had nurses in our family.
Yeah.
For generations, yeah. Great job.
Great job.
Guys are paid.
Physical,
not paid enough.
Definitely not paid enough.
No.
But I feel as if that's probably why people like working with us as well. It's because they got that. When they've had a bad experience in property, it's sort of that kind of, they're mentally scarred. And as a nurse, you're so good at getting that out of people.
Yes.
You are.
I imagine a lot of the skills of being a nurse, knowing nurses pretty well, would work well.
We're good at talking to people.
Good at talking. You show a lot of empathy. You can be firm when you need to be firm.
Yeah.
Obviously fair, kind, all these really important aspects, but, very process driven as well.
Very process driven. Yeah. And the same with when you ran your tradie things.
You want to get electrocuted, right? Don't touch that wire.
But yeah, we're bringing those trades in.
So that's really cool. So you guys are now 100% buyer's agent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still tinker on the weekends doing electrical work?
No chance.
Never want to see a pair of pliers again?
No, there's way too many kid activities from soccer to dancing to ballet. Goodness.
Hey, you're a coach now.
Yeah.
It's like a coach.
So you got a lot of time back then.
Yes, most definitely. And cool. Having that ability to, it allows me to do things like, now coaching my son's soccer team and just getting fulfillment from other parts of the community-based, arrangements that are out there. And what's really important to myself was when the kids started at school, just being there on some of their milestone days, first day of school, certain assemblies when they get awards.
Yeah.
My parents were always there when I was young. So I was like, I always remember that, having them there. There's a moment you get that award, you're like so excited. It's like, where's mum and dad? Oh, there they are. Yeah. So that reassurance. Yeah. So I know how much that meant to me, and I want to make sure that I'm able to be able to give back to the kids.
And that's one of the great things of property. And I speak to a lot of property investors and people in property, and most property investors go, I love property. And I go, what do you actually really love about it? You don't actually love the asset class. You love probably the outcome the asset class gives you. And a lot of the time it's optionality and choice, right?
You know what it is now? It's fulfillment from our clients now.
Yeah.
I think like changing somebody's grind to a better outcome.
Yeah.
That's why I still love
Helping
that
other people's
nursing,
optionality.
like helping others. I used to love seeing people go home and actually walk out of the hospital and not come back.
That's the idea with nursing, isn't it?
Not everyone makes it out the door.
No, they don't. No, it's horrible. But so I want to talk a little bit about your portfolio. We'll just go to a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. Phil Tarrant, host of the Property Investor Show, having a chat with Michael and Nicole over at Taylor Property Group. Now, I was going to try and pronounce your last name again. Kowalczyk, Polish by background.
Correct.
And you're sort of talking about your sort of migrant stories. You know, a lot of people from Poland and sort of Eastern Europe come out to Australia, sort of communism and all that sort of stuff. So we've got sort of second and third generation Polish now in Australia. Great contributors to the community. Where's the best Polish sort of butcher in Sydney, you reckon?
Butcher?
I'm going to put that one on you.
Oh, they've closed now.
Really?
Yeah. It was Norel's, I reckon, I would say.
Yeah, probably Western Sydney, but yeah.
They've now just gone,
just solely online.
Solely online?
Not online. They sell to other butchers now. They don't have a front shop.
That's no good. Yeah. Anyway.
But you can get their deals. Norel Goods, I reckon.
Norel
pretty good.
Okay.
Norel small goods,
good.
Yeah.
Well, what's sort of the Polish sort of diaspora community here in Australia's attitude towards property? Is like property a thing for Polish people?
That's a good question.
You speak to some, like, it's really interesting, and you know, a lot of the migrant communities in Australia, like you speak to the Chinese or the Indian communities or whatever, like they've all got different attitudes to money and sort of wealth creating. I just wonder if is it okay to talk about property and making money in sort of a Polish?
Yeah, look, I think it's still a very taboo topic.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at just our sort of immediate network of Polish people that we know. A lot of them, baby boomers, they came across, they wanted to buy their own place, and that's about as limited as it gets. Whereas
I think the baby, like the older generation, they might have had a few properties, let's be honest, and they've sold them off for their retirement.
Yeah.
Right. They've done well. And then you've got, there's a lot of skepticality. Polish people are skeptical. All right. Everything that sounds too good, it's skeptical.
Skeptical. No good.
No good.
Dodgy.
Why?
Yeah.
You know, what's going on? How are they getting that? You know, like they're very skeptical. But that's, I think, most Eastern Europeans.
True.
And that comes down from just generations of history and what happened over there.
So it's not. So what would people think? Like, what would your community think about building a sort of portfolio of 21 properties?
Young ones, I think they'd be fine. They're
yeah, the younger
they'd be like,
generation are a
that's
bit
cool.
more understanding and like, oh yeah, you know, we can relate to it. Whereas I think for the older generation, it's kind of like frowned upon.
No, it's not frowned upon. I think it's just that it doesn't make sense to them. Why don't you buy your own home and
pay it off?
Expand on that and pay it off, and you know, like it's
just generationally irrespective, I think, of culture, right? Like there's still your baby boomers and that cohort or even older, they're still like, buy a house with a white picket fence and pay it off in 30 years and
the great Australian dream.
There you go. Then retire on a pension, right? You know.
Which in itself is statistically scary.
Yeah. You couldn't do it now, right? Yeah. Well, hopefully I won't need to.
I don't know. Like my parents, for instance, they were very business orientated. And so I think the thing that I took out from them was treat property as business.
That's important.
And not everyone does that. A lot of people treat it as emotional.
Yeah.
And that's probably why mistakes happen. And I know we could roll off why some people make mistakes.
And to your point, I think what we're seeing a lot of is investors who are basically hearing that someone's done well, whether it's a baby boomer or family friend at a barbecue, and then
typical barbecue.
It's like, oh yeah, you know, we bought this property, it's done well, and then people get excited. It's like, oh right, we need to get into the property site space, and then that FOMO kicks in, and that investor gets all excited. They go home, they jump onto the computer, realestate.com, domain.com, And they're like, oh, I'm going to buy an investment property. And then it's like, well, cool, but what kind of property? What sort of budget? Why are you doing it? What's the actual goal? Like, is it just to buy a property and tick that box, or are you actually doing it with intent behind it? So it's always interesting to hear that perspective from when we speak to people.
Yeah,
But a lot of people would say though, oh, it's completely unattainable. Back to my earlier point, right? They'll get excited about it and go, well, I need to raise all this money in order to get a deposit.
Well, they need to
to buy
speak
an investment
to a
property.
broker first.
Yeah.
That's the first step. Knowing actually, the first step is knowing your income, knowing how to read your payslip. If you have a payslip, if you've got a business, knowing your BAS statements and all that jazz. But it's really knowing that. That's
Take it
fundamental.
responsible for your own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second, speak to a broker. Do you have a deposit? Do you not have a deposit? Can you borrow? If you can't borrow, you're not jumping into property, are you?
Yeah.
You're looking at other strategies, mate.
And to add to that, then I think mindset comes into play, because whilst Sydney, Melbourne, some of these capital cities, it's relatively expensive relative to incomes that we're generating. The mindset is, oh yeah, I live in Sydney, or I only know Sydney, so I must invest in Sydney. But that's not necessarily the case. Purely, we've seen that, with Perth market, certain Queensland markets, in Adelaide as well. And it's just about opening your mind to what is possible when you look at things like data and whatnot with different plays. And you've got to tie it back in. It all comes back to your goals as to why you're doing it. You've got to.
So why are you guys investing in property?
Why?
Why?
Good question. Really, it's for
It's
our
a nice
lifestyle.
It's a simple question.
It's for our lifestyle.
Yeah.
Literally, it's for our lifestyle.
Lifestyle today or lifestyle in the future?
No,
Or lifestyle
like
for
now,
both?
today.
And the future. So, coming back to that point of when I was growing up and not having money, I was quite restricted to certain things, whereas I'm a big advocate for experiences, memories, travel, that sort of stuff. So,
And we're big on putting our kids in another culture as well. Big on that.
yeah, so
Like we've just done Vietnam.
That'd be cool. You go to north or south or both?
Both.
Both.
Got the kids.
What'd you prefer, Hanoi or Saigon?
I actually like the north.
Yeah.
North was colder.
I like the north, but we did go in there holiday period down south, so a lot of things. Were
How
closed.
young is your youngest?
Now 1.
Now 1. Wow.
Yeah, she turned 1 about a few weeks ago.
And how old was she when she was in Vietnam?
9 months.
9, 10 months.
You just that 10-month-old. Yeah. God, you guys are keen.
Very.
Wasn't our first rodeo.
No, not our
How'd you
first.
go? Sort of like, you go to like Vietnam, there'd be a whole family on a bike, right? And it's just normal. Like, whereas I'm like, baby's got to be in a baby seat and like you got to strap in. And like, how'd you go? Just like, I don't know, just sit in the minivan, you'd be right.
Well,
Take
that's
it
funny.
easy,
When we come back to Sydney, our
Yeah.
kids, our 3-year-old was like, I don't want to sit in this seat.
Yeah.
It's too tight. The other seat was loose. And I'm like, you're not in a booster, mate.
Yeah.
You're not in a booster. But regardless,
That's pretty cool. So it's optional. So you can live the life you want to live now.
Yeah.
And I guess you've got flexibility for your work, right? You're not
Yeah.
tied to a building site or
Yeah.
having to go. Like the nurses can't work from home.
no, we can't.
You know?
No.
And I think a lot of people forget. Like a lot of people can't work from home.
No, a
Tradies
lot of
can't
people
work from home.
Can't work from home.
Nurses can't work from home. Police
No.
people can't work from home.
Can't work
Ambos
from-
can't work from home.
No. Frontline can't work from home.
Frontline can't work from home. Like doctors can't work from home.
No.
So now you can do everything you want, and you've put the hard work in now, and you probably don't need to do anything with your portfolio.
No, it's not. It's just it's the next level, right? It's like the giving back.
Yeah.
It's getting the joys out of helping others. Like right now, we have a client that has done value add with us. And they're overseas catching their dreams, building he's going for his job, but he's also taken his small family with him.
That's pretty cool.
And he could just switch off while he knows that we're in his back corner. One, purchasing the properties because he has a strategy with us, but also he's implementing these value add strategies that we implement, like a reno, a granny flat or whatnot. He is also going to have a subdivision coming up further down, but we've already planned it out in the sense that he's super comfortable, happy living his life, doesn't have to think of property. And it's like, this is why we say property isn't the strategy, it's the vehicle, right, to getting to you what your goals are. and you need to break it down like you would in business. It's getting down to the basics of cash come in, cash come out. What am I left with? And what am I going to do with what I'm left with? Some people in their portfolio might be at the beginning of their stages. Some will be in their mid and some will be the end. It needs to be like you need to write it out. Yes, things are going to change. Life changes. Life throws you curveballs. But having the right network that you can, like our client, just zoom off and live his life how he wants on his terms, and he doesn't have to stress about it. We're a phone call away. If something is up, he'll know about it.
So what do you care so much about how other people are getting on?
Yeah, I think it's the nursing thing for me. I don't know. I just always loved helping people. But I get like a fulfillment out of it. But
I sort of get it from nursing, but Sparky's normally just trying to open your wallet, right?
I think Michael likes property. He likes solving problems. And that's why he's the strategy guy. He loves it when somebody comes in like, oh, they're on their fourth property, they're stuck or something like that, and how to get them unstuck and how to get them further in there. Like, it's that.
Seems like a really good partnership. Like you have complementary skill sets, but you sort of come from different angles for different, which is really important, right?
You know what drives me insane? I'll tell you what drives me insane.
What's that?
Hearing a sales pitch from an off the plan, right? That boils my blood. I don't know why. It just does. And I think sales pitches in general boil my blood, and that's probably why we're so referral based. But it's like
a lot of people still buy off the plan.
They will. Look, you'll get results, but you won't get the results maybe as
quickly, perhaps.
Oh, it's some people really luck out and do well off the plan.
Yes.
Most don't.
Well, that's the interesting thing. Like with my first purchase, that was off the plan.
Buy off the plan, did you?
Yeah.
Where'd you buy?
In St Mary's.
Oh, yeah.
Out Western Sydney.
St Mary's.
Yeah.
Where is St Mary's? On the main drag?
It was called Putland Street. I remember that, but it was
one of my first properties was in North St Mary's.
Was it?
Yeah. It was a house. It was a house in it was great. Good investment. It wasn't off the plan apartment.
It wasn't a thing. It was a townhouse. So maybe that because of that, and that did well, and
would have.
In that 12-month period when I realised that the equity generated from that property alone was more than I was earning as an apprentice electrician, I was like, well.
So you started investing in property as an apprentice, like Sparky. Mm-hmm. So you would have been earning. So when was this? Like 15 years ago?
Little.
What's it?
I was 20, 21.
21.
14 years ago.
What was your first paycheck?
I reckon it would have been about $400 a week.
It wouldn't have been much more than that, because I remember as a first year I was earning about $280, and it went up to about $360, about $450 as a third year. So we're not far off.
So how did you get a deposit? How did you because most people go, no way in the world. Like, it's only 14, 15 years ago, right?
Well, slightly different though, times.
Great time to be buying the western suburbs of Sydney, by the way.
Yeah. I was just very frugal. I mean, growing up, not having my parents
living
not
at
having,
home,
like
driving a crap car.
Exactly. You nailed it. I mean, for me, going to the cinemas was a big thing. $20 for tickets, and I suppose the part I'm leaving out here is I actually worked for the cinemas for a period of time, so I was getting 50-cent movie tickets.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So
was that a day? Was that like a job on the weekend and stuff, or
that was actually when I was in school, but I'd held that employment very much
to get
like,
those 20
free
tickets.
Where'd you grow up in Sydney?
Greenacre.
In Greenacre. Yeah, very cool.
And now, Nicole and I were living in Chiswick. So
yeah, nice. So how'd you guys meet? Like this community thing, or
community thing? Yeah. So
you saw each over the popcorn at the Hoyts or somewhere other.
No,
some romantic
actually,
you're not far off. You're not far off.
Funny. Yeah. So pretty much, I'm a hills girl.
Yeah. Okay.
Grew up in the hills, very sheltered.
Hills, as in Castle Hill.
Castle Hill, exactly it. I would probably say centre.
I did
Castle
my
Hill.
drinking apprenticeship at the Castle Hill Tavern.
Oh, so you're back in the balls.
Yeah.
The brawl days.
The brawl days.
Great fun.
I lived walkable distance from Hillside.
Okay.
To put a perspective, really, in the middle of the hills. And had friends that were Polish, and they were older than me, so they could take me and a few of my girlfriends to parties because they had cars.
Yep.
And my parents sort of knew some of their parents, so they were happy for us to pretty much go with those guys and to be back on time. And it was sort of
that was it.
That's how I met him.
Yeah.
Yeah, movie marathon.
So your first two properties were you
Just him
all by
solely.
yourself, just in your own personal name and stuff?
Correct.
Yeah. And then the next one was both you guys.
Yeah, that's when
Yeah.
Nicole joined with myself, where we bought a property in Western Sydney in Wentworthville, which is a very
Wenny. Great spot. Where in Wenny?
South Wentworthville.
South Wenny?
Street.
Yeah,
South Wenny,
very good.
So
Jersey Road.
we picked up a property on a large block, 900 and something squares that needed a renovation.
So you
And
spent your weekends doing that.
basically,
Yeah.
and
All the trade friends, let's get them down, get
Freebies.
them beers for them.
Yeah.
that was it. And at the time when we did that, didn't really have much, renovation knowledge, strategy in terms of, how to go about it. So everything was emotionally driven. We'll do this because we were like, yeah, we can foresee ourselves doing that, but it wasn't tailored to the demographic. The budget that we had blew out. The timeline that we initially anticipated being, 4 to 5 weeks ended up being like 12 weeks. And so we're like, yeah, let's not do that again. And following that, I then
Got educated.
We did Cherie Barber's course.
Shree Barber's course.
That's how, back in the day.
Yeah, okay. I've heard that's a very good course.
Oh, we did
It
it a
is.
very long time ago.
Yeah. Is
Or
she still
Michael
doing
did
it?
it. I don't know. I have no
I
idea.
think she's
So I remember
doing
it was like it was a weekend, right? And
It was a
like-
great network.
So she was big on renovating, like spending as little as possible
Yep.
for transforming a place.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then after doing that, we'd obviously made a few mistakes. We'd learned from that. But then as we grew the portfolio to 4, 5, 6, our confidence just kept getting better. So we were progressing a little bit bigger in terms of that. So we started dabbing with granny flats.
Yeah.
Got comfortable with that. I mean, the first one, again, probably not the smartest way. We did own a builder.
Did you try and build a granny flat?
Yeah.
You're mad, man.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah.
that was just the thought of the tradies. I had everything there.
Yeah,
Like,
he
how
did.
hard
I
could it
must
be?
say, it wasn't that bad. Now
Yeah.
thinking
But,
in respect.
was it the best use of our
No,
time?
definitely not.
Absolutely
This is
not.
the point, right? You think, I can do that, or I get my mates to do it, and they
Yeah,
go,
that's it.
they rock up on site on the Saturday, they're
Yeah.
hungover,
Yeah.
they don't want to be there, they're doing it because they feel like they've got to help you out. You can't really work them too hard because they're doing you a favour, like it's cool.
Exactly.
I've done it.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much what happened. I mean,
Eventually that equity goes pretty quickly. They go, I did it for the first one, no more for you.
yeah, look,
So-
from a cost perspective, it building that first granny flat set us back about 75K. This is 2015,
That's not bad.
which is
That's what I said. It's
Probably
not bad.
cheaper than like an off-the-shelf product.
Yeah.
from someone else. Yeah.
we were getting quotes at the time. I think it was about 130 to 140, and this was just before getting married, so everything was just go. But looking back now, I definitely wouldn't go through that same painful process.
Yeah, that's because we do things way differently now.
Yeah.
But the only way to learn what not to do often is to do it, right? And I always say to people, like, using a buyer's agent means you can short track that sort of stuff, right? And it's really, really important. We'll have a chat about that. We'll just go to a quick break. Stay with us, back in a moment. Welcome back. Phil Tarrant, Bumper Investment Chat with Michael and Nicole over at Taylor Property Group. Now, so you guys said you live in Chiswick, so owner-occupied property. Do you rent?
Rent vesting.
Rent vesting. Okay, cool. So a nice joint then.
Yes.
Yeah, on the water in Chiswick.
Near the water, yeah.
Bit fancy.
They go
Yeah.
they go fishing often.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
the
good.
kids and I. Yeah.
So how do you reconcile? And I know a lot of people again would go, "Oh no, like 4 kids. How can you not own the home that you live in? Like, what if? How do you reconcile that as a mother?"
I'll tell you why. When you're a growing family, you're growing needs. If I'm stuck in one of the house that I bought, I'm not going to grow those needs, am I? I can just depart to the next place that I want to be at if need be. So
That's smart, right? A lot of people would counter that saying, yeah, but if you buy the house and then you don't have to pay any sort of capital gains tax when you sell it because the principal place of residence, that sort of makes sense if you're trading up. The inverse of that is that every time you transact the property, you've got to pay stamp duty.
each to their own.
Yeah.
But how I invest in property, I, again, treat it like a business.
Yeah.
And at the moment where we are in our time, we want to rent vest because of our plans that we have. And that's just to grow the portfolio and keep growing the portfolio. And then there might come a time that we'll just purchase it outright.
Yeah, you got that choice.
Yeah.
So again, you can use property as an enabler for
That's it.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
That's again one of our goals. But
And most people that tune in this podcast probably get it, but you speak to people who aren't really invested in the concept of property investment. They would just think that was but you got no security.
Yeah. And that's such a common
but I do.
thought process that people have. Even our parents included were like, they couldn't grasp the concept as to why you just don't buy a house. I mean, if you got that many properties,
Rent
just
money's
sell them.
debt money.
But then that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't invest it, then it's dead money. But for us, my mentality is like, if you're going to buy your family home, you want to make sure you're happy with it. And unless it's your dream home that ticks all the boxes, property transactions in Australia is super expensive.
Yeah.
And to add to that, the other caveat is that a lot of people don't realize when they go and get the family home, they get debt to their eyeballs. A lot of people think they can still invest after that, but they don't realize that when they've invested so much of their serviceability, it caps them into what they can do further. And
especially if they don't have a job that can increase.
In terms of their income. So as a result, people can find themselves offside just by something as simple as that. That's why
they get stuck. They get stuck in a trap, and a lot of people think that's unfair, and they see other people doing it. But to your point, you can't compare your chapter 1 with someone's chapter 5 or someone's chapter 10.
100%.
Right?
100%.
But a lot of people get absorbed and obsessed with that, which is pretty tough.
Well, yeah. I'm going to be frank. All right. What makes us different to other buyer's agents as well? Because there are different types of buyer's agents out there. I'll just say most buyer's agents, they're data driven. You've had them on the podcasts. We've talked about data. You've talked about, your supply, demand and other factors, right? What makes us apart is what do we do with the data and what strategies can we implement and where do our clients purchase for what they can afford at that time and making that strategy for the future. So, and that's,
This large way. So how do you guys perform then in terms of, the properties that you're acquiring for your clients? Do you outperform the market, do you think?
Yeah, so to give you some fun stats, in 2024 alone, our clients were averaging about 28.6% capital growth over the year, which is in excess of about, I think it's 4 times the national average in itself. Now, a lot of that as well is driven by your probably non-conventional ways of investing. And what I mean by that is, like Nicole touched on, most buyer's agents, they use data, but we use it as the foundation and then target assets, obviously depending on the client's profile, what they're comfortable with, how aggressive or passive they want to be, to then target specific opportunities where they can perhaps add value, down the line. It's not something they need to do straight away, but being able to find opportunities where, can we create value within the existing floor plan? And what I mean by that is converting a 3-bedroom into a 4-bedroom, or perhaps adding a dual income arrangement under the same roof, or a granny flat, or really upping the ante and doing certain strategies like you retain and subdivide, that sort of stuff. Because when you pair the data with the value add plays, you're going to get the best of both worlds. Whilst you're riding warm to hot markets, what happens then once that market peaks or flatlines? You lose that momentum. And so
you're talking about you trying to identify assets that you can manufacture equity in by doing other stuff.
Yeah,
basically.
I will say that by far our clients, most of the best deals that we've had have been the unsexy ones, the ones that need that tender loving care.
Yeah, it's great. We built our portfolio out doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, back before kids and
Yeah.
doing what you guys are doing, like, on the tools, getting stuff done. And I'm not a tradie, I'm just a hack. But, you'd be surprised, as long as you're not messing around with like electrical work or plumbing. You can pretty much do most of it yourself. Like, some of it's crap jobs, like, taking tiles off walls and, all that real sort of sweat equity type stuff, right? But if you want to be in the game, right, there's probably a question, what do you reckon really separates sort of serious portfolio builders? I imagine being able to and willing, from a mindset point of view, get your hands dirty to do stuff probably matters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I take it back to just simply the fact that we what we've learned in our portfolio is the underlying foundation. I mean, the key is to have a goal, like a measurable goal. You know, why you're doing it. You know, everyone's got their idea of, do we create a passive income? Do we just want to accumulate X amount of properties? Are we doing and building up the capital to buy our primary place of residence? But what I think separates the everyday investors to those is, they really nut out the strategy and work out how they're going to get from where they are at the moment to where they're going to be. Because statistically speaking, if you don't have that plan, I think the average is 1 to 2 investment properties that the average Australian holds, and then beyond that, there's no clear way moving forward. So you've got to have the right team.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to get an accountant, a good quality broker. You know, rather than shopping with your big 4 banks, that sort of stuff. And if you can get a buyer's agent who's got runs on the board, who you can relate with, you can have a conversation.
Understands what you want to do.
Understands, that piece, because I think that's super important in aligning your values and goals.
Then a property manager, to be honest.
And getting that
And
property manager, because a good property manager.
How do you manage your properties? So they're all over the joint. You've got property managers for all of them, obviously. Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, we do. I do a very strict due diligence on my property managers.
How do you work out if your property manager is good?
Communication.
Yeah, communication, test run sometimes, but really, Google reviews go far.
Yeah.
Also talking to the team, not just one property manager. That's
typically
up the
there
top.
is a team. Because
There's a team.
You
can find them. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can find them on the socials. Get in conversation with them, and once you're in convo, things come out.
Good. So you guys, you're married, you live together, you got a family together, you're in business together. Do you see too much of each other? How do you
It's busy. We hardly see each other. That's the thing.
Do you, maybe they're not sort of, deliberate, but do you have sort of going, no, we're not talking about work now, or you always talk about work?
No.
How do you sort of balance it all?
So when we start a business,
I'm super impressed. It's cool, but you must do it somehow.
Oh, I don't know. I like to dance, for instance.
Okay.
That's my hobby. Michael likes to play soccer. That's his hobby. Got our own time there. We found that it's really important to have your own time. Also, with the kids, it's also important to have time alone with them in the sense of things.
Be able to disconnect.
We're really lucky in the sense that we've got grandparents still that either side, okay?
So you can palm them off when you need it.
Yeah, they're very active grandparents.
That's cool.
Very good supportive network there.
You know, I learned a lot from my granddad when he used to come out and take care of me.
They reckon it's a really important relationship.
Totally.
Yeah.
He's probably one that taught me not to boast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why, like, we're not out there
Be humble
bloody
and grateful.
just shouting out what we do and how we are and this and that. I think it sort of also stems from just the humbleness of when you got something, you shouldn't boast about it.
Yeah, that's good.
But regardless, we're here now.
It just works.
It just works.
Who manages the portfolio? So you manage a portfolio. Yeah.
Mark does.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I when we got to that point in 2017, I really wanted to understand exactly what each property was doing from a cash flow standpoint, and so I spent hours building a spreadsheet because I really wanted to.
Everyone's got their own spreadsheet.
Yeah, everyone's got their own.
That's the thing.
Mine.
And it got to the point where I needed that spreadsheet to really understand, because
Not out.
if the interest rates increased or rents increased, just knowing where things were in real time.
So you're positively geared now.
Correct.
The portfolio is positively geared. Okay. And it took you 15 years really to create that. Yeah.
Give or take.
Because it's hard. Like a lot of people starting out today, it's hard to build a positive geared portfolio.
Absolutely.
It is, yeah.
You know, and you hear a lot of noise around it. Build a 6-figure portfolio. Like, it's hard.
Yep.
I will be
honest.
Near on impossible.
You need to be comfortable in taking that leap. If you're going to be skeptical, you're not going to purchase. That's full stop. You're just going to be like your own enemy. If you're going to be this negative, like, oh, maybe I should use my money on something else, or you've got to put away.
Yeah.
Put away. Have something for a rainy day. If you're doing a renovation, there's a key principle that we do, and that's for every dollar spent, get 3 in return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Sri Barber special, huh?
That is a Sri
Yeah.
special.
Yeah.
It is.
It makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Like, people go, oh, I'm going to do a reno for
Yeah.
30 grand. You
Yeah.
go, and you can get a lot done for 30 grand, by the way.
Yeah.
Like if you're smart,
Yeah.
new flooring, you paint, you jimmy up some stuff, new lighting, all that sort of thing. You get a lot done with it. But so what's next for the portfolio then? So starting your business, you tapped out for a little while, or you still be able to get borrowing?
No. So we're actively doing development projects now,
Yeah.
using the same sort of strategies that we are with clients now. On the back of what we mentioned before with Nicole, to get to that 100 or six-figure passive income, so to speak. The reality is there's no one particular strategy that's going to get you there. You got to get diverse, and you got to be creative, because that's effectively what we know. Things like the subdivision, things like rooming houses, which is something that really helped us as well.
So rooming houses, that's not passive, right? You're in there. That's where you're sort of renting out each room, but you've got a good property manager that manages.
Yeah,
it.
I mean, there's not much more work or effort that we need to contribute from our end, because the way it's set up, the property manager that's managing it is just looking after it. They vet the tenants, they make sure that the profiles are aligned, and for that particular property, it was going to be a make or break, and that was actually one of the ones that we restructured from our individual names to help with the borrowing capacity, because we were toying with the brink of being financially stuck. So when we did that, yes, it was expensive, but that was the strategic move that allowed us to be able to.
So in your restructure, you didn't sell properties to yourself into trust, or did you?
We did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we did.
But
That
that's
was
the
costly.
thing. In most instances, it's not viable because.
So you got to do an accountant.
We had to go with our accountant.
So this comes back to the quality of your advisor, right? Because a lot of accountants wouldn't. They
blow their mind.
They wouldn't get it.
Well, that's why you have to have an advisor who
Yeah.
also invests in property.
Invest in property. So you transitioned stuff, sold it into trusts.
Yeah, we sold one or two properties back to the market that we felt that we could no longer do anything with them.
Yeah.
But then there were two properties, was it 2 or 3, that we went back and forth with the accountant for a couple of weeks, where we're like, look, this is the intent. Realistically, how much depreciation do we have to repay back to the tax man? What's the buyback period? The stamp duty.
Yeah.
How long is it going to take before that property actually recoups the costs that are involved in the entire process? And then he mapped that out, and that's what allowed us to basically go, okay, do we pull the trigger?
So what do you reckon it cost you just to restructure for long term? So the assets are good. You wanted to hold them. So
correct.
Like
So
hundreds.
No, not that much. But for each property, we obviously had to factor in capital gain. We had to factor in stamp duty, legal, just your typical transaction. I'd say about 35 grand off the bat for each property. So you're talking about 60,000-70,000 odd dollars, which is almost a deposit for another property if you factored that in at the start. But of course, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
But let's be honest. So many people fall for the trap of getting like trusts when they not ready yet.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, often you're better off fixing a bad structure than being overstructured, right? And a lot of people set out not thinking they end up with lots and lots of properties, right? But what's happened is because information now is so more accessible, podcasts like this, and you start talking about sort of complicated things like trust and stuff. People go, "I'm going to be a property investor. I'm going to set up a trust," and they go to an accountant. Accountant go, "Okay."
Yes.
And rather than going, well, why are you
Totally.
doing that? You're mad. Like, you don't need to.
Totally. We actually had a client that came to us.
Yeah. So we had a client late last year came on board. They'd set up a trust. They purchased their 4th property themselves. They came to us to help with their 5th property. And so when I workshop the strategy with them to understand, well, what does the next property need to look like relative to what they're trying to do? I was like, okay, this property, it's in a trust on surface level, looks good. But then I was like, okay, based on the area I know we were actively buying there, it looked like the rents were a little bit inflated. And I was like, okay, didn't really think much of it. But then when I did the cash flow, I was like, this property is still heavily negatively geared. And when I looked at the asset, I was like, okay, fair enough. It's more of a buy and hold type approach, which is fair. But the reality is that's going to take around 10 or so years, maybe less, or unless you get that magical letter from your accountant saying, oh, yeah, that property's holding its own, it's probably not going to become neutrally cash flow or positive cash flow anytime soon unless you do something creative.
Yeah.
And so after a couple of months with that client, what happened was that the tenant that was in there paying that inflated rent couldn't afford it anymore. So they moved out. Then a bit of a domino effect happened where after they moved out, they made a mess of the property. Turns out there was no bond taken by the property manager at the time, which doesn't surprise us. The property manager never really vetted the tenants in the first place. And so our clients were basically stuck with zero income, that level of expectation that their property should fetch this amount of rent, but, it was overinflated. And, whilst we were able to put them in touch with a property manager and some local trades to help get that property back on the market, it was really a costly and expensive mistake. So, what I will say is it's all well and good to get the structure right, but if you don't have the asset that complements that, then it's not really going to help your situation from a financial standpoint. And this is where a lot of investors miss that key critical part, because for that to apply, and mind you, not every lender will allow for that, but you're basically needing either a letter or having that portfolio hold its own, and that tying that.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of and again, some of it's misinformation where people think, oh, I can keep investing in property even though I have poor serviceability if my trusts are neutrally geared. All I need is a letter from from my accountant saying that the trusts are neutral. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of accountants that don't want to give those letters.
No,
absolutely,
because they've been burnt. Let's be honest.
And they've got professional standards they need to. They cannot just go
adhere to
do it. And I'll tell you that the lenders are starting to look at it, and tax officers are starting to look at it as well now.
Yeah.
So it's don't overcomplicate yourself.
No,
that's
100%.
Exactly. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep
Couple
it
in your
simple.
own name. A couple in the next one. Then there you go. Keep going. And guess what? At a point in time, you're going to have to start paying land tax, whether it's in your own personal name or
and that's
in a
another
trust.
thing that people don't factor in.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
with you.
no exceptions.
We look at it.
A lot of places, right? But anyway, I've enjoyed chatting, guys. Yeah. So what's next for you guys with the business? Is it just with Tailored? Is it just keep at it? You sound like you really care.
Oh, look, yeah, okay, I do care. I can't say I don't care. What's next with the business? Well, we've got a trade show that we're going to be at the Sydney
Property Expo.
Property
Okay,
Expo,
cool.
Which is May
ICC.
17th, 18th. So if you want to
Stay away from all the off-the-plan sellers while you're out there.
That's exactly what we're going to stand out. We're not.
Yeah. So just put aside
We do not.
and be
sell
careful.
you.
And this is for our listeners also. Be careful of a buyer's agent who recommend off-the-plan apartments. Cause,
Yeah, they get a kickback in the back.
they might not be paying. There's a lot of that still goes on. A bit dodgy.
Yeah, so we're going to be in booth
A7. So
A7.
come down, have a chat, and if you are listening to this podcast, come down and use the gift word Phil Tarrant.
Oh God!
And
Throw you under the bus.
Throw you under the bus.
Yeah.
And we'll give you a bit of a special gift for when you come down.
Oh, you get a gift, do you?
I might as well. Why not?
Small gift.
Yeah.
That means that you've
It's a pair
gone
of pliers
all this,
or so, is it?
gone all this way and listened to the whole podcast. And
So what about if people want to track you down? Because a lot of people listen to this podcast. What's the best way to find you?
yeah, www.tailoredpropertygroup.com.au, and that's like
T-A-I-L.
Tailored
suit.
like a
Tailored
suit.
suit. Okay. Do you think long and hard about that name? Or was it just
Well, tailoring it to your needs, right?
tailoring it to your needs?
Yeah, you know what? It became, off the back of when we were doing that strategy where a lot of people have this sort of vanilla approach where, we're all about strategy, maximizing the outcome. And a lot of that, I kind of look back as that's tailored advice. Like, you want people to tailor it to yourself, not just here's one strategy that is going to suit.
But it's not only about the property. It's about tailoring the network of individuals that they need currently in their portfolio, what they want to do. So it was just a lot of
tailoring.
Centering around the person.
So it's not, you're not an off-the-rack low suit. You actually get tailored properly.
Yeah,
I get it.
Spectre there.
I get it. Well, yeah, thanks for coming in, guys. Yeah,
Thanks for having
really
us.
good chat. Yeah, really good chat. It's good. It can be done.
It certainly can.
Can be done.
It's done. And whilst it's not perhaps for everyone, those more active strategies, the reality is some of the best deals, like Nicole mentioned, are the ones that have that ability. Like if we have time, I might share just one example of that. So basically we had a family who owned their PPOR and they wanted to come to us because they had no idea in terms of investing. Now, they came on board last year.
Late 2023.
Late 2023. And we helped them secure a freestanding property in Townsville.
Yeah.
Which for our listeners who are aware, they know Townsville's been doing really well, over the last few years, especially in the last 12 months. Now, for that particular client, their risk awareness, that guy, he's a tradie as well, so he had that understanding and level of comfort in value add. And we were able to secure a freestanding 3-bedroom home, high-set Queenslander for $298,000, which where are you going to get that bang for buck in your Sydney, Melbourne?
Crazy.
And following that, we had the property we knew it had some certain works that needed to be done.
So we factored that in.
Which we factored in.
Yeah,
and then the building and pests come in. And as they always do, there's always nitty-gritty, few bits and pieces. But with this particular case, there was a few extra bits that we didn't necessarily forecast. And given the vendor was extremely motivated, we used that to our advantage. And I think this is where experience plays a key role, because for a lot of investors out there, certain things that are flagged in the building and pest report,
it scares them off.
Scaremongering,
Yeah.
And it's like,
pest and building reports always look dire.
We love them. I don't know. I just love dissecting them. Well, you do.
Just the tradie in
The
me.
tradie in.
And so as a result of that, we were like, okay, this is the case. Some of these issues need to be addressed. And because we've got teams on the ground in all the areas that we do target, it's a simple, quick phone call to the trades. Just go, hey, give me a figure on what you think this could cost. And within hours, I've got that figure. So
And you'll know whether that's a real number, right?
Well, yeah.
Because only tradies know, because otherwise.
Yeah.
Yep. When you talk the lingo, it's a little bit less chance for them to pull the wool over your eyes. And so by being able to facilitate that so quickly, we were able to negotiate an additional $40K off that one, which is huge, huge. And so following that, the client, when we'd already forecast certain works, they spent 36 grand.
Yeah, 36 grand.
So they were already within what we
original price.
And so fast forward today, they secured that property at $258, but Townsville's done extremely well in the last 12 months. That property's almost doubled. It's returning $480 a week in rent, so that's a 9.6 odd % yield.
Yeah.
And I mean, the cash on cash for that, is huge.
The issue is, though, they're probably going, I want to find another one of them.
Well, that's it. And to give the listeners a bit of a disclaimer,
that doesn't happen all
these deals don't happen very
And then they
often.
do. When those unicorns do come.
You've got to be in the market, though, in order to find them.
Market.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they come, you got to jump on them straight away.
Yeah.
And that's why it's not for everyone. You just have to, it's for the people who are ready to go. Communication is really good.
Yeah.
They can just say yes or no straight away. Not those who need a few days to wander and ponder about a deal.
No.
Yeah.
All right.
yeah.
Nice. tailoredpropritygroup.com.au. There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
No,
I really
thank
enjoyed the
you.
chat today. It's cool.
Thanks for having us.
Make sure you put a review on this podcast. Tell all your friends.
Yeah, I'll just go.
I think I already
I want the whole of the Polish community in Australia listening to this. Saying
Done.
5 stars, done. And I know it's a tight community. Don't get on the wrong side of them, people.
Oh,
Yeah, they're good.
Thanks,
I've
Phil.
been to Poland. I've still got a bottle of vodka there. I bought back from it. That I look at every now and then.
You
And
wanna
go, I had a,
we love our vodka.
yeah, it's good.
Michael
good.
doesn't drink anymore, but do you want to know a
Good
fun
man.
fact for our wedding?
Yes.
So guess how many litres of vodka we went through?
How many people at your wedding?
150.
Well, about 100 litres of vodka. 50
That's a
litres.
lot.
How much?
We had
Nearly 36
36 litres of vodka.
six of those 6-litre
bottles.
bottles, and that barely left anything over.
Was it good stuff or was it the
No, it was
headache?
Belvedere.
Belvedere.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. Fancy. That's what happens when you invest in
That's
property.
made in Poland.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. So thanks for tuning in. Remember to check out smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Find us on social media. Find us, like us, follow us, comment on us, all that good stuff. We'll see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.
See ya.
There you go.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.